There's something about modern life that feels off. You wake up, and from the moment you check your phone, there's a low hum of dissatisfaction that never quite goes away. You scroll, you compare, you chase. There's always something else to want, something you don't yet have, something just out of reach. Most people live this way. Most people call it normal. But what if I told you this feeling? The quiet ache, the sense that something's missing, is not random. What if I told you it's been engineered? We begin uncovering a truth that's been buried under noise, distraction, and false promises. A truth the Stoics knew centuries ago, one that modern life tries desperately to silence. You are unhappy not because life is unfair. You're unhappy because your mind has been trained to want everything and question nothing. Here's the first hidden reason you're always unhappy. You believe happiness comes from addition. The Stoics believed it comes from subtraction. Pause. Breathe. Most of us think the next thing will fix it. A better job, a better body, more money, more peace. But the Stoics taught something radical. The more you need, the more you suffer, because every desire becomes a chain. Every expectation becomes a trap. Seneca said, "If you don't regard what you have as enough, you will never be happy, even if you rule the world." This isn't passivity. It's not laziness. It's clarity. The first step to breaking free isn't changing your life. It's understanding how your mind works. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not suffering because of what you lack. You're suffering because of what you think you lack. And that difference is everything. You've been sold the same lie since you were old enough to want. More is better. Faster is better. Success is happiness. But when was the last time you truly felt enough? Enough for yourself. Enough without achieving more. Enough without someone else's approval. We're taught to live in future tense. Chase progress. Grind. Grow. Prove. Perform. And somewhere along the way, we forget how to simply be. The Stoics said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Epictetus. Let that settle. Be content to not compete. Be content to go unnoticed. Be content to be misunderstood, because in stillness, the lies scream louder. And when they do, the truth finally has a chance to speak. Your unhappiness might not mean something is wrong with you. It might mean something is right with you, but you've been trained to doubt it. You've been told you're not enough, not productive enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not interesting enough. And instead of questioning the system that profits from that belief, you question yourself. But what if nothing is missing? What if happiness isn't ahead of you, but already inside you, buried under layers of noise? What if you stopped chasing long enough to listen? What if you stopped comparing long enough to feel? This isn't about retreating from life. It's about meeting it with clarity, with presence, with peace. The second reason you're always unhappy is because you've been trained to believe that more is the answer. More money, more time, more love, more followers, more validation. But here's the paradox. The more you chase more, the further you drift from yourself. The Stoics understood this long before social media or consumerism existed. They didn't have algorithms or shopping apps, but they saw the pattern in human nature. Epictetus wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." You are not unhappy because you don't have enough. You are unhappy because you've been told you're not allowed to feel complete. until you get more. Pause. How often do you pause to ask, why do I even want this? We rarely stop to examine our wants. Instead, we let society upload them directly into our mind. You see someone else with something, and suddenly you want it, not because it matters to you, but because it seems to matter to everyone else. That's not desire, that's programming, and it runs deep. You scroll past someone's perfect body. You feel small. You see someone's income post. You feel behind. You see someone's relationship. You feel alone. So you chase what they have, not because it brings joy, but because you believe it will silence the voice that says, "You're not enough." But here's the truth. No amount of more can quiet that voice. Because the voice isn't fed by what you have, it's fed by what you believe. As long as you believe you are not enough as you are, you will suffer, even when you win. You'll achieve something and feel empty within hours. You'll get approval and need it again the next day. You'll hit a goal and feel lost without a new one, because more is never enough when enough doesn't live inside you. The Stoics weren't against ambition, they were against attachment. Marcus Aurelius led armies, ruled an empire, and still said, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." Let that sink in. Can you receive success without letting it define you? Can you lose comfort without letting it destroy you? Because if your happiness depends on conditions, then your peace will always be at the mercy of the world. Here's a quiet truth. Every time you chase more, you send a message to your mind. This moment isn't enough. I'm not enough. Over time, that message becomes a belief. That belief becomes your identity. And that identity becomes a prison made of goals, metrics, numbers, opinions. But it's still a prison. And the Stoics, they offered you a key. Detach. Not from life, but from illusion. Not from effort, but from outcome. Not from ambition, but from addiction to validation. So now ask yourself, if I never got what I'm chasing, would I still be able to feel peace? Would I still be able to breathe with presence? Would I still be me? Because the moment you can answer yes, that's the moment you become free. That's the moment the voice inside starts to change. And freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like stillness. It feels like walking through the noise and no longer feeling like you have to prove anything. It feels like coming home to yourself. This is not theory. This is training. Why is it so hard to feel peace? Even when you finally get a break, no meetings, no noise, no demands, you still reach for your phone. You still check. You still scroll. You still run. But what are you running from? We've been taught to fear silence, to fear boredom, to fear stillness. But the Stoics saw silence differently. To them, stillness wasn't a threat. It was a gateway. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But how can you retreat inward when your mind is constantly pulled outward? We think distraction is harmless. We think it's just killing time. But what if distraction isn't harmless at all? What if it's the reason you feel disconnected, not just from the world, but from yourself? Distraction has one purpose: to keep you from looking inward. Because when you do look inward, you'll have to confront what's really there: the insecurity, the self-doubt, the guilt, the voice that whispers, "You're not enough." So instead of listening, we numb it. We binge. We scroll. We stimulate. And each hit of distraction gives us temporary relief, but long-term emptiness. We are not addicted to our phones. We are addicted to escape. Here's what the Stoics believed. Freedom is not found in control of the world. It's found in control of your attention. That is the battleground of modern life. Not wealth, not fame, not even success. Attention. Because whatever controls your attention controls your mind, and whatever controls your mind controls your life. Now pause. Look around your space. How many things around you are designed to steal your focus? Every icon, every buzz, every alert, every image of someone else's life crafted to make you feel like yours is behind. And what do? You run faster, you try harder, you chase more, all because you never had the space to sit and feel what's already here. The Stoics would challenge us with this. Can you be alone with your thoughts without needing to escape? Because the longer you avoid silence, the louder your unhappiness becomes. But if you can stay, if you can endure that silence long enough to meet yourself, you'll begin to see something else. Not the broken parts, not the shame, not the not enough, but the awareness underneath it all. The witness, the part of you that's not chasing, not performing, not proving, just aware. And that awareness is peace. If this feels like truth, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's next. There's a kind of pain you carry every day, but barely notice. Not because it's small, because it's familiar. It shows up when your plans fall apart, when someone doesn't meet your expectations, when life refuses to follow your script. You don't break down. You just feel off, uneasy, distant from peace. That's not weakness. That's a symptom of something deeper, attachment, not just to people, but to ideas, outcomes, images of who you think you're supposed to be. The Stoics warned us, the more you attach to what you can't control, the more you suffer when it changes. And everything changes. Modern unhappiness doesn't come from chaos. It comes from expectations not being met, over and over. You expect to be understood, to be respected, to be seen a certain way, to win, to get what you deserve. And when that doesn't happen, you don't just feel frustrated, you feel lost, because your identity was tied to the outcome. What you cling to controls you. You think you're holding the reins, but most of the time you're just reacting to protect a fragile version of yourself. And every time that version is threatened, your peace crumbles. This is the trap. Not that you care, but that you depend. The Stoics didn't say, don't feel. They said, don't need things to be a certain way to feel okay. There's strength in someone who can give their best, love fully, strive deeply, but still remain free from what happens next. Unhappiness isn't caused by failure. It's caused by needing success to feel whole. Unhappiness isn't caused by rejection. It's caused by needing validation to feel worthy. Unhappiness isn't caused by change. It's caused by resisting change because your identity depends on what was. Let that sink in. It's not the world that makes you unhappy. It's what you've decided must happen for you to allow yourself peace. So what do? You chase more. You fight harder. You try to control what was never yours to own. And when that fails, you suffer again. But the Stoics offered a different approach. Detachment with presence. Not indifference, not coldness, but clarity. A kind of deep stillness that comes from knowing Even if this fails, I won't lose myself. Even if they don't agree, I know what's true. Even if it ends, I still begin again. This is strength the world doesn't recognize. It's not loud, it doesn't posture, it simply is. Ask yourself this: what have I attached my peace to? A job, a title, a person's opinion, a version of my life that no longer fits. The more rigid your grip, the more fragile your peace. And maybe that's the real reason you're always a little unhappy, not because you don't have enough, but because you've convinced yourself you must have it, or you'll fall apart. The Stoics knew freedom isn't the absence of pain, it's the absence of dependence. Let go of what was never yours to control. That's where peace lives. Not in having more, but in holding less. Not in protecting an identity, but in remembering who you are beneath it. Not in the chase, but in the clarity that you don't need to chase. Not anymore. Most people don't know they're unhappy. They don't cry every night. They don't scream at the sky. They function. They laugh, they produce, they move. But under all that motion, something feels off. Not broken, just empty. A dull ache, a quiet restlessness. You scroll past it, work through it, schedule over it, but it stays. Because no amount of movement can cover up the fact that you're not running towards something, you're running away. You say you want success, but why? You say you want peace, but where are you rushing to find it? You say you want happiness, but have you ever stopped long enough to ask yourself what that even means? The Stoics taught this: you will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of, because most people search outside for what's broken inside. They chase better jobs, new relationships, cleaner diets, faster mornings, thinking that if they can just fix their life, they'll fix their feelings. But that equation is reversed. You don't feel unhappy because your life is wrong. You feel unhappy because your focus is wrong. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes not from hard work, but from living someone else's definition of enough, from constantly trying to become what the world told you you should be, instead of asking, what makes me feel real? Eventually, something cracks. Maybe burnout, maybe heartbreak, maybe that one night you stare at the ceiling and finally admit, I don't know who I am when I'm not achieving. That moment feels like collapse, but it's actually the door to something most people never find: stillness. When you stop running, you meet yourself again. You hear the voice you buried under deadlines. You feel the grief you numbed with dopamine. You notice the aching truth you avoided with productivity. And here's the truth: you're not unhappy because you're not moving fast enough. You're unhappy because you never asked where you're going, or why. The Stoics weren't against ambition. They were against unconscious ambition. They knew the pursuit of more without clarity leads to suffering, because chasing what you don't need is the fastest way to lose who you are. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you seek tranquility, do less, or rather, do what's essential." But in modern life, we've confused doing more with being more. And that illusion is making you miserable, because deep down, you know, even when you win, you don't feel it. Even when you arrive, it doesn't last. So you run again. But what if you didn't? What if just for a moment you stopped? Not because you're lazy, but because you're listening to the part of you that's tired, not physically, but spiritually, to the part of you that knows this isn't working. Stillness isn't weakness, it's confrontation with the truth, with the fear, with the version of yourself that only knows how to earn worth not embody it. But something happens in stillness. You begin to realize you don't need to chase peace, you just need to stop interrupting it. You don't need to get there, you need to remember you're already here, and here is enough, not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. Stillness strips the noise. You stop comparing, you stop performing, you stop defending a version of you that was never yours to protect, and slowly, you meet the version that was always underneath, the one that's not afraid of silence, the one that doesn't beg for validation, the one that's tired of running and ready to live. This doesn't mean you stop dreaming or working or striving. It means you stop abandoning yourself in the process. You stop believing that joy is somewhere else, that peace is one more goal away, because it's not. It's here, right where you stopped running. So ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I just pause? Who am I when I'm not chasing anything? What would life feel like if I stopped trying to escape it? Stillness isn't the end. It's the beginning, not of a slower life, but of a truer one. Not about doing less, but finally doing what matters. Not about fixing everything, but no longer believing you're broken. And maybe, just maybe, that's the reason you felt unhappy for so long. Because you've been searching for yourself everywhere but here. This is where it all leads, not to a secret, not to a formula, but to something far more uncomfortable and far more honest, yourself. The real reason you're unhappy isn't out there. It's that you've been disconnected from who you truly are. For so long you forgot what that even feels like. The distractions, the goals, the roles you play for others. They're not the problem. They're the cover. But the truth has been waiting underneath it all, and the Stoics knew it. They knew happiness doesn't come from what you add to your life, but what you're willing to let go of. You were never meant to carry all of this. Your pain isn't random. It's the tension between your truth and your performance, between the life you're living and the life that's calling you underneath it all. And the longer you ignore that voice, the louder the unhappiness grows. You call it burnout, or boredom, or feeling off. But really, it's grief, the quiet grief of abandoning yourself, piece by piece, for a version of success that doesn't even feel like you. So what now? What do you do with all this? Where do you go after realizing that everything you were chasing was just a distraction from what matters? You don't need a 10-step plan. You don't need a new identity. You don't even need to fix yourself. You were never broken. You just got buried. The Stoics would tell you, return. Return to simplicity. Return to the present. Return to what's essential. Let go of what you can't control. Let go of the noise. Let go of the need to be anything more than what you already are, right now. That doesn't mean you stop evolving. It means you stop escaping. You stop chasing happiness and let it meet you where you are. Happiness isn't a finish line, it's a frequency. You tune into it when your inner world matches your outer choices, when your days reflect your values, when your mind isn't at war with itself. It's not euphoric, it's not always loud. Sometimes it just feels like this. No need to prove, no fear of missing out, no craving for more. Just here, just you, whole. Ask yourself, what would my life look like if I stopped performing and started being? What would I choose if I wasn't trying to impress anyone? What does peace feel like, and why do I keep running from it? These questions don't need quick answers. They just need space. And in that space, something begins to grow. Not a new version of you, but the version that was always there, patiently waiting. The one not addicted to noise, the one not obsessed with image, the one who feels deeply, lives simply, and loves honestly. That's you. You've just forgotten. So pause. Not forever, just long enough to remember. You don't need to do more. You need to be more here. And if that scares you, good. Growth always begins where comfort ends. The Stoics didn't teach avoidance. They taught honor. Honor the present. Honor your capacity to feel. Honor your values above your ego. And in doing that, you stop being just productive. You become alive, fully, quietly, powerfully alive. This is the hidden reason you've always felt unhappy, because deep down, you know there's a version of you that's waiting to return, and you've kept them waiting far too long. So the next step isn't to scroll to the next thing, it's to stop and ask, what if I listened this time? What if this wasn't just another video, but the beginning of something real, not for the world, not for followers, not for applause, for you. And when you're ready, there's more, not more content, more clarity. The next reflection is waiting, and maybe, just maybe, it'll help you remember a part of yourself you didn't know you'd lost.